water at her collarbone and rising an inch every 15 minutes. Sergeant First Class Linnea Vashon had been counting. 16 inches in 4 hours, which meant in 6 more hours the Mekong Delta would swallow her whole. Her rifle rested on the waterlogged beam above her head, wrapped in plastic she had fashioned from Vietnamese rice sack. The radio in her ear crackled. Firebase Basilisk asking for status. She keyed the mic with pruning fingers. Still breathing, she said. For now. For hours earlier, Captain Yolande Briere had stood before a map of the Delta region and pointed to a small fishing platform in a canal no wider than a suburban street. This is position Stillwater, Briere had said. 400 meters from the compound, where Kingfisher will meet his buyers at dawn. The name Kingfisher sent a ripple through the briefing room. Everyone knew what he had done. 47 Marines in Helmand Province, killed by weapons his network supplied. Linnea had known 3 of them personally. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Maybe you have experienced flooding in your area, or know someone who has had to face rising waters. Gunnery Sergeant Cade Rennick had objected immediately. Water missions need experienced operators, he said, his eyes not quite meeting Linnea's. The Delta floods this time of year. Whoever takes that position needs to handle 12 hours, submerged if necessary. Linnea had felt the familiar heat in her chest, the anger she had learned to transform into cold precision. She spoke before Briere could respond. I was swimming before I could walk, Gunny. Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. We do not fear water where I come from. We live in it. Now, for hours into the mission, the rain hammered the surface of the rising flood like 1,000 tiny fists. Linnea pressed her back against the submerged beam and watched the water creep higher. Her spotter, Lance Corporal Dmitry Zelenko, was positioned on higher ground 200 meters east. They called him Monk because he had almost become a priest before enlisting. His voice came through her earpiece, calm as a confession. How are you holding up, Stillwater? She almost smiled. Stillwater was her call sign. The irony was not lost on her tonight. I have had worse baths, she replied. Any movement at the compound? Negative, Monk said. Kingfisher is not due until dawn. 10 more hours. Linnea did the math she had already done a dozen times. 10 more hours. The water would be over her head in 6. Something bumped against her leg beneath the surface. She forced herself not to flinch. Debris from a flood, she told herself. Just debris. But her mind went to the snakes that lived in these waters, the fish with teeth, the things that thrived in darkness and murk. She had grown up with creatures like that in the bayou. She knew how to share space with danger. A memory surfaced unbidden. She was 14 years old, standing on the porch of her grandmother's house as the levee broke. Her brother Matthew was beside her, 8 years old and terrified. The water came so fast. She grabbed his hand and they ran, but the current was faster. She could still feel his fingers slipping from hers, could still hear him calling her name as the flood took him. Linnea pushed the memory down where it belonged. Matthew had drowned 17 years ago. She had made a promise that day, standing in chest-deep water with empty hands. The water does not get to win. Not ever again. Her earpiece crackled with Captain Briere's voice from Firebase Basilisk. Stillwater, be advised. Weather Service just updated the surge projections. You're looking at 12 feet total before this system passes. Linnea calculated quickly. 12 feet would put her completely underwater by midnight. And Kingfisher was not arriving until dawn. She keyed her mic. Understood, Firebase. I will adapt. There was a pause before Briere responded. Stillwater, if conditions become untenable, you're authorized to relocate to secondary position. Secondary position was 300 meters north on higher ground. It was also outside effective range of the compound. Taking that position meant abandoning the mission. Negative, Firebase, Linnea said. I will hold position Stillwater. The rain intensified, and somewhere in the darkness, she heard the groan of timber giving way to the flood. She adjusted her grip on the beam above her head, feeling the plastic-wrapped rifle beneath her fingers. Delphine. She had named the weapon after her grandmother, the woman who had taught her that survival was not about strength. It was about patience. The water takes the weak and the impatient, her grandmother used to say. You are neither. Linnea Vashon settled deeper into the rising water and prepared to wait. The water reached her chest by hour 5. Linnea could feel the pressure of it against her ribs, the cold seeping through her uniform and into her bones. She had stopped shivering 20 minutes ago, which she knew was a bad sign. The body shivers to generate heat. When it stops, it means the body is losing the fight. Monk's voice came through her earpiece. Stillwater, I have eyes on the compound. Lights just came on in the east wing. Linnea focused on the distant structure through the rain. 400 meters of black water between her and the target. Tell me what you see, she said. 3 vehicles arrived 10 minutes ago, Monk reported. Security detail. Looks like advance team for tomorrow's meeting. Kingfisher is not among them. She filed the information away. The advance team meant the meeting was still on schedule. 10 more hours until dawn. 10 more hours until the shot that would avenge 47 Marines. She thought about those Marines sometimes. Staff Sergeant Riley, who had taught her to read wind at 600 meters. Corporal Washington, who had shared his grandmother's pecan pie recipe with her. Lance Corporal Dimitri Chun, no relation to Monk, who had been 22 years old and engaged to be married. They had all died because Kingfisher sold weapons to people who wanted Americans dead. Tomorrow, she would balance that ledger. Her mind drifted to Scout Sniper School 2 years ago. She had been one of 3 women in a class of 40. The only one to graduate. Gunnery Sergeant Rennick had been one of her instructors, and he had made it clear from day one that he did not believe she belonged there. During water survival training, he had held her underwater 10 seconds longer than any other candidate. Preparing you for reality, he had said when she surfaced gasping. Reality is harder on people like you. She had not complained. She had not reported him. She had come back the next day and outshot him on the range. 3 rounds, 300 meters, grouping so tight you could cover it with a quarter. Rennick had said nothing. He had simply walked away. But she had seen something in his eyes that day. Not respect exactly. Recognition. Something brushed against her hip beneath the water. Linnea held her breath and remained perfectly still. The contact came again, longer this time, something smooth and muscular sliding along her thigh. Snake. Had to be a snake. In these waters, probably a banded kite. Highly venomous. One bite would mean paralysis within an hour, death within 3. She did not move, did not breathe. The snake explored the strange obstacle in its path, this warm vertical thing that did not belong in the flood. Linnea felt it coil loosely around her leg, testing, curious. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her body remained stone. In Louisiana, she had learned this lesson young. The moment you panic is the moment you die. Monk's voice in her ear nearly made her flinch. Stillwater, you copy? Firebase wants a status update. She could not respond, could not move her hand to key the mic. The snake was ascending now, sliding up along her hip toward her torso. She counted seconds in her head. 1, 2, 3. At 15, the snake changed direction. At 23, it unwound from her body and disappeared into the dark water. Linnea let out a breath she had been holding for nearly a minute. She keyed her mic. Firebase, Stillwater. Status unchanged. Position holding. There was a pause before Rennick's voice came through the channel. Briere, we need to discuss extraction options. The weather is getting worse, and Vashon has been in the water for 5 hours already. Hypothermia is a real risk. She's going to be useless for the shot, even if she survives until dawn. Linnea felt the anger rise in her chest. She keyed her mic before Briere could respond. Negative, Gunny. I am mission capable. I will be mission capable at dawn. Another pause. Then Rennick again, his voice tight. You do not get to make that call, Sergeant. The commander decides if you are fit for duty. Captain Briere's voice cut through the tension. I have heard both positions. Stillwater, what is your honest assessment? Can you hold that position for 10 more hours and still take a 400-meter shot? Linnea thought about the cold in her bones. The snake that had just explored her body. The water that would be at her throat in 4 hours. She thought about Matthew, her brother, disappearing beneath the flood. She thought about 47 Marines who would never come home. "I do not drown, Captain," she said. "I am from Bayou, and I do not miss." Monk's voice broke through on the private channel, just between the two of them. "For what it is worth," he said, "I believe you." Linnea almost smiled. "Why is that, Monk?" "Because the Lord tests those he loves most," he replied. "And also because I watched you hit a moving target at 600 meters during a sandstorm in Kandahar. If anyone can make this shot, it is you." She felt something warm in her chest despite the cold water. Gratitude, maybe, or just the simple comfort of being believed in. "Thank you," she said. He chuckled softly. "Do not thank me yet. We still have 10 hours, and that water is still rising. I will keep you company. Tell me about Louisiana. Tell me about the bayou. What is it like growing up in a place where the land and water cannot decide who is in charge?" Linnea settled against the beam, her rifle secure above her head, the dark water pressing against her chest. She began to talk, her voice low and steady, and for a little while the cold did not seem quite so terrible. Then the radio crackled with Monk's sharp intake of breath. "Stillwater, we have a problem. Boats, coming from the north. 4 of them, and they're heading directly toward your position." The boats emerged from the darkness like predators sensing wounded prey. Linnea counted the silhouettes against the distant compound lights. 4 vessels, low and fast, cutting through the floodwater with purpose. She could hear their engines now, a low growl that grew louder with each passing second. "How far?" she asked Monk through her earpiece. 800 meters and closing," he replied. "They are running without navigation lights. These are not rescue boats, Stillwater. These are hunters." Linnea assessed her options in the span of 2 heartbeats. She could not run. She could not hide beneath the water for long enough to matter. Her only chance was to become invisible in plain sight. She looked at the debris floating around her position. Broken timber, torn vegetation, plastic containers, the scattered wreckage of a village that had lost its battle with the flood. She began to move, slowly, carefully, gathering debris around her body. A broken board across her shoulders. Tangled vines draped over her head. She smeared mud across her face from a floating clump of earth. The rifle stayed above the water, tucked beneath the largest piece of timber she could find. 300 meters, Monk reported. His voice was steady, but she could hear the tension beneath it. "They're spreading out. Search pattern. They're looking for something. Or someone." Linnea lowered herself until the water touched her chin. The cold was a living thing now, wrapping around her throat like fingers. She tilted her head back and breathed through her nose, shallow and silent. The rain helped, pocking the surface of the water, creating noise and visual interference. She became part of the flood, just another piece of wreckage in an ocean of destruction. The first boat passed 50 meters to her east. She could see the men on board now, 3 of them, armed with automatic weapons. One swept a flashlight across the water in lazy arcs. The beam passed over her position, hesitated, moved on. Linnea did not breathe, did not blink, did not exist. The second boat came closer. 30 meters. She could hear the men talking now, their voices carried across the water in a language she did not understand. Vietnamese, probably, or maybe Cambodian. It did not matter. The tone was universal. Bored men doing a job they did not expect to yield results. 20 meters. The flashlight swept toward her again. This time it stopped on the timber pile that concealed her rifle. One of the men said something and pointed. The boat began to turn. Linnea's mind raced through scenarios. If they found the rifle, the mission was over. If they found her, she was dead. She had her sidearm, a 9mm strapped to her thigh beneath the water, but engaging 4 boats full of armed men was suicide. She needed them to lose interest. She needed a miracle. The miracle came in the form of a water buffalo. The animal had been swept into the flood somewhere upstream, and now it thrashed past the boats in a panic of rolling eyes and churning hooves. The men shouted and pointed, their attention captured by the massive creature fighting for its life. The boat that had been approaching Linnea's position veered away to avoid collision with the buffalo. By the time the animal had disappeared into the darkness, all 4 boats had regrouped and continued north. Linnea waited until she could no longer hear their engines. Then she waited 5 minutes more. Only then did she allow herself to breathe normally. "That was close," Monk said. Linnea wiped mud from her eyes. "Define close," she replied. He almost laughed. "Close enough that I was composing your eulogy in my head. It was going to be very moving. Lots of references to your stubbornness." She checked on Delphine, her rifle still secure beneath the timber. The plastic wrapping had held. The weapon was dry. In a mission where everything else was trying to drown her, at least she could count on her rifle. Firebase came through on the main channel. Captain Briere's voice was tight, with controlled concern. "Stillwater, we tracked those boats on thermal. They passed within 20 meters of your position. How did they miss you?" "I became debris," Linnea replied. The captain paused. "Say again?" "Ich had ihm blind siegt, Mom. Cover myself in flood wreckage." They looked right at me and saw nothing worth investigating. Rennick's voice cut in. "That was luck, Vashin. Pure luck. Next time those boats come through, you might not have a water buffalo to save you." Linnea felt the familiar spark of anger, but kept her voice level. "It was not luck, Gunny. It was training. The same training you gave me, if I recall. Camouflage and concealment. Become your environment. You taught me that." The silence on the channel stretched for several seconds. When Rennick spoke again, some of the edge had left his voice. "Just stay alive, Vashin. Dead snipers do not take shots." Monk came back on the private channel. "He is warming up to you. I can tell." Linnea snorted softly. "That is Rennick warming up?" Monk's voice carried a smile. For him, that was practically a hug. The water had risen another 2 inches during the boat encounter. It lapped at her jaw now, cold and patient and utterly indifferent to her survival. 8 more hours until dawn. 8 more hours until Kingfisher arrived. 8 more hours of holding her ground against a flood that wanted to swallow her whole. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "The water takes the weak and the impatient. You are neither." Linnea Vashin settled deeper into the flood and prepared to prove her grandmother right. 6 kilometers away at Firebase Basilisk, Gunnery Sergeant Cade Rennick stood before the tactical display and watched the blue that represented Linnea Vashin's position. That I had not moved in 6 hours. He was not sure if that meant she was disciplined or dead. Staff Sergeant Tomas Quevedo looked up from the communications console. "Her vitals are still transmitting, Gunny. Heart rate elevated but stable. She is alive." Rennick nodded, but did not look away from the display. "Being alive and being mission-capable are 2 different things," he said. "She has been in that water for 6 hours. Hypothermia degrades fine motor control. Even if she survives until dawn, her trigger finger might not work." Quevedo hesitated before speaking again. "Permission to speak freely, Gunny?" Rennick turned. "Granted. I have seen her shoot," Quevedo said. "At Quantico, at Pendleton, at ranges across 3 continents. I have never seen her miss a shot that mattered. Not once." Rennick's jaw tightened. "There's a first time for everything." He walked to the window and stared out at the rain. 3 years ago, he had watched his spotter die because of bad intelligence. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison had trusted a female intelligence officer's assessment of an enemy position. The assessment was wrong. Rennick's spotter, a man named Danny Weir, who had been his best friend for 11 years, took a round through the throat. He bled out in Rennick's arms while the intelligence officer apologized over the radio. Rennick knew his feelings about women in combat were not rational. He knew that one officer's mistake did not condemn an entire gender. But knowing something and feeling something were different animals entirely. Every time he looked at Linnea Vashin, he saw Danny's blood on his hands. Back in the flood, Linnea was fighting a battle Rennick could not see. The water had reached her mouth. She had to tilt her head back now to breathe. Her face pointed at the black sky, rain falling directly into her eyes. Every few minutes a wave would wash over her face, and she would have to hold her breath until it passed. Monk's voice was her anchor. He had been talking for the past hour, filling the silence with stories about his childhood in Philadelphia, his grandmother's pierogies, the seminary where he had almost taken his vows. Why did you leave? Linnea asked during a brief lull. The seminary, I mean. You seem like you were on the path. Monk was quiet for a moment. My sister, he said finally. She was 16. Got sick. Cancer. I prayed every day for God to save her. Spent hours on my knees in the chapel, begging for a miracle. She died anyway. Linnea heard the old pain in his voice. I am sorry, she said. Monk continued as if she had not spoken. After the funeral, I realized something. Prayer without action is just wishful thinking. God helps those who help themselves. But sometimes he sends a sniper. Linnea would have laughed if she had the breath for it. Remind me to put that on a t-shirt if I survive this. Monk's voice warmed slightly. Deal. But you have to survive first. What is your status? She assessed honestly. Water is at my mouth. I have maybe 2 hours before I have to relocate or drown. Rifle is still dry. Fingers are numb, but functional. I am cold, Monk. Colder than I have ever been. But I'm still here. Firebase broke in on the main channel. Captain Briere's voice carried urgency. Stillwater, we have a problem. The flood changed the geography faster than we anticipated. The eastern channel has shifted. Kingfisher's boats will not pass the compound from your current angle. You need to relocate 300 meters east to maintain line of sight on the target zone. Linnea processed the information. 300 meters. In flood surge. In darkness. With a rifle, she had to keep dry. How long do I have? She asked. Briere paused. Thermal imaging shows the advance team is preparing the compound for arrival. Best estimate. Kingfisher reaches the target in 6 hours. You need to be in position in 30 minutes to establish a new hide before dawn light makes movement impossible. 30 minutes. Linnea looked at the churning black water between her and the eastern channel. She could not see what was beneath the surface. Debris, currents, creatures, the unknown. Monk came on a private channel. I can see the route from my position. There's a submerged tree line you can use for cover. But still water, the current is strong. You will be swimming against it most of the way. Rennick's voice cut through. Briere, this is insane. You are asking her to swim 300 meters in flood conditions while keeping a rifle dry. One wrong move, and she drowns. One splash, and every hostile in the area knows her position. Extract her now, and we will find another way to get Kingfisher. Linnea keyed her mic before Briere could respond. Negative on extraction, she said. I can make the swim. I have done worse in training. That was training, Rennick shot back. This is real. You go under out there. Nobody is coming to save you. Linnea thought about her brother, about his hand slipping from hers, about the promise she had made standing in chest-deep water with empty arms. Then I will not go under, she said. Stillwater, moving to new position. Radio silence until I arrive. She took one last breath of air, secured Delphine above her head with one arm, and pushed off into the darkness. The current hit her like a fist. Linnea had prepared for resistance, but not for violence. The flood was a living thing, angry and hungry, and it wanted to drag her north into the darkness where no one would ever find her body. She swam with one arm, the other holding Delphine above the waterline. Her muscles screamed with every stroke. The cold had stolen her strength hours ago, and now she was running on something deeper. Stubbornness, maybe, or spite. The water wanted her dead, and she refused to give it the satisfaction. 50 meters. She counted the distance in her head, measuring progress against the tree line Monk had described. The rain hammered the surface around her, masking her movements but also blinding her to obstacles. Something hard struck her shoulder, spinning her sideways. A branch. She grabbed it, used it to steady herself, then pushed off and kept swimming. 100 meters. Her arm was failing. The one holding the rifle trembled with exhaustion, threatening to drop below the surface. She could not let that happen. Delphine had to stay dry. The shot had to be possible. 47 Marines were counting on her even if they were no longer alive to know it. The current shifted, pulling her sideways toward a gap in the submerged trees. She fought it, kicking hard, but her legs were sluggish and uncooperative. The water dragged her into the gap, and suddenly she was spinning, disoriented, unable to tell which way was up. Her head went under. The world became black and cold and silent. She held her breath and forced herself to think. Bubbles rise. She exhaled slightly and felt the air leave her lips, moving upward and to her left. She kicked in that direction and broke the surface, gasping. Delphine was still above water. Barely. The plastic wrapping had held, but she could see water beating on the outside, searching for entry points. She had maybe another 100 meters to go, and her body was finished. Matthew's face flashed in her mind. 8 years old, brown eyes wide with terror, his small hand reaching for hers as the current pulled him away. She had not been strong enough to hold him. She had not been fast enough to save him. For 17 years, she had carried that failure like a stone in her chest. "I am sorry," she had whispered at his funeral. "I am so sorry I let go." Her grandmother had found her afterward, sitting alone in the church pew, staring at the small casket. Delphine Vachon had been 73 years old, her hands gnarled with arthritis, her back bent from decades of work. But her eyes were sharp as glass. "You did not let go," her grandmother said. "The water took him." "There's a difference." Linnea had shaken her head. "I should have held on harder." Her grandmother had taken her face in those weathered hands. "Listen to me, child. The water takes what it wants. You cannot fight it with strength. You fight it with patience. You fight it by refusing to quit. Your brother is gone, but you're still here. So you keep swimming. You keep swimming until there is no water left to cross." Linnea kicked harder. 150 meters. Her vision was narrowing, darkness creeping in at the edges. Hypothermia stealing her consciousness 1 degree at a time. She could stop. She could let the current take her. It would be easy. It would be warm, eventually, when her body stopped fighting. No. The word was a spark in the darkness. "No, I do not quit. I do not drown. I am from a bayou." 200 meters. She could see the outline of a capsized boat ahead, hull pointing at the sky like the belly of a dead whale. That was her target. That was her new position. 50 more meters. Something tore across her leg, sharp and sudden. Pain flared through the numbness. She had hit submerged metal, probably the edge of a roofing panel torn loose by the flood. She could feel blood warming her thigh, mixing with the cold water. The wound was deep. She would deal with it when she reached the boat. If she reached the boat. 25 meters. Her arm finally gave out. Delphine dropped toward the water, and Linnea caught the strap with her teeth, biting down hard, holding the rifle above the surface through sheer desperation. She swam the last stretch with both arms, legs kicking weakly, jaw clenched around the strap until her muscles burned. Her hand touched the hull of the capsized boat. She grabbed the edge and held on, breathing hard, trembling with exhaustion and cold, and something that might have been triumph. Monk's voice crackled in her ear. "Stillwater, I have visual on your position. You made it." Linnea spat out the rifle strap and pulled herself onto the hull. She lay there for a moment, gasping, staring up at the rain. "I made it," she confirmed. Then she looked down at her leg and saw the gash, 6 inches long, bleeding freely into the water below. She added a single word. "Mostly." The blood was already spreading, a dark cloud in the darker water. In these waters, blood meant predators. She had minutes before something came to investigate. Linnea pulled herself fully onto the hull and began tearing strips from her uniform to bind the wound. Her fingers were clumsy, nearly useless from cold, but she forced them to work. She had not swum 300 meters to become something's meal. Not tonight. Not ever. The bandage was crude, but functional. Linnea had torn 3 strips from her undershirt and wrapped them tight around the gash, pulling until the pain made her vision white. The bleeding slowed, but did not stop entirely. She could feel the warmth of it seeping through the fabric, a stark contrast to the cold that had claimed the rest of her body. She checked Delphine next. The plastic wrapping had survived the swim, but just barely. One corner had torn loose, exposing the scope housing to the elements. She peeled back the plastic and examined the damage. Water had seeped in, not much, maybe a tablespoon, but enough to fog the interior of the scope. At 400 meters, in low light, with a moving target, a fog scope was the difference between a kill shot and a miss. Stillwater, Monk's voice came through her earpiece. What is your equipment status? Linnea stared at the fog glass. Rifle is functional, she said. Scope is compromised. Water intrusion. I need to clear before dawn, or the shot is not happening. There was a pause on the channel. Then Captain Briere's voice, carefully controlled. Stillwater, what are your options? Linnea thought through the problem. Body heat, she said. If I hold the scope against my chest, my core temperature should clear the fog. It will take time. How much time? Briere asked. Linnea calculated. An hour. Maybe 2, depending on how much heat I have left to give. She pressed the scope housing against her sternum, beneath her soaked uniform, and felt the cold metal leach what little warmth remained in her body. It was a trade. Her heat for the scope's clarity. Her survival for the mission's success. She had made worse bargains. Rennet came on the channel. Briere, this is getting out of control. She is hypothermic, bleeding, and now her equipment is failing. Pull her out before we lose her entirely. Briere did not respond immediately. When she did, her voice carried a weight Linnea had not heard before. Gunny, can I speak with you on a private channel? The main frequency went silent. Linnea was alone with Monk's quiet breathing in her ear and the rain drumming against the hull beneath her. What do you think they are discussing? She asked. Monk considered. Whether to trust you or save you. Those might not be the same thing. For minutes passed. Then Briere returned to the main channel. But this time her voice was different. Softer. More personal. Stillwater, I am switching us to private. Just you and me. The channel clicked, and Linnea heard only Briere. There is something I need to tell you, the captain said. Something I have not told anyone on this operation. Linnea waited. Briere continued. My nephew was one of the 47. Corporal Andre Briere. He was 24 years old. He had just re-enlisted because he believed in what we were doing over there. Kingfisher's weapons killed him. Linnea closed her eyes. I did not know, she said. No one does, Briere replied. I requested this command, but I kept the connection classified. I did not want anyone thinking this mission was about revenge. I wanted it judged on its merits. But I need you to understand something, Vashin. I'm not asking you to die for this mission. I'm asking if you can live through it and still take the shot. If you tell me you cannot, I will extract you right now, and we will find another way. No judgment. No consequences. But I need the truth. Linnea felt the scope pressing against her chest. She felt the cold in her bones, the throb of pain in her leg, the exhaustion dragging at her thoughts. She thought about Andre Briere, a man she had never met, who had died because of weapons sold by a man she was going to kill. My brother died in water, she said finally. I was 14. I held his hand, and the current took him anyway. I made a promise that day, ma'am. The water does not get to win. Not against me. Not against the people I am trying to protect. I can make this shot. I will make this shot. Briere was quiet for a long moment. Then she said simply, I believe you. The channel clicked back to the main frequency. Monk's voice returned. Stillwater, I have movement at the compound. Advanced team is setting up lights on the second floor balcony. Looks like they are preparing for the meeting. Linnea shifted her position slightly, keeping the scope pressed against her chest while angling for a view of the distant structure. Through the rain, she could see the glow of electric lights, harsh and yellow against the darkness. How long until dawn? She asked. Monk checked. For hours. Kingfisher should arrive within the next 2. She felt the scope housing. Still cold. Still fogged. She needed more time. She needed her body to produce heat it no longer had. Then give me something to focus on, she said. Talk to me, Monk. Keep me awake. Keep me warm. Keep me here. Monk's voice came back, steady as a heartbeat. Did I ever tell you about the time I arm-wrestled a bishop? Despite everything, Linnea almost smiled. The scope pressed against her chest like a promise. For more hours. She would not quit now. She would not quit ever. The bishop's story carried her through the next 30 minutes. Monk had a gift for storytelling, stretching moments in his scenes, finding humor in places where humor had no right to exist. By the time he finished, Linnea had learned that bishops cheat at arm wrestling, and that Monk had spent 3 days scrubbing chapel floors as penance for proving it. Tell me another one, she said. Her voice was weaker now, the words coming slower. The cold had settled into her chest, making each breath a conscious effort. Monk paused. Stillwater, how are you doing? Honestly, she considered lying. Decided against it. I am fading, she admitted. Core temperature is dropping. I can feel it. Thinking is getting harder. The scope is still fogged. I do not know if I have enough heat left to clear it. Monk was quiet for a moment. Then he said something she did not expect. Pray with me. Linnea blinked. I'm not religious, Monk. Neither am I, he replied. Not anymore. Not the way I used to be. But prayer is not about God. It is about focus. It is about gathering everything you have left and pointing it at something that matters. So pray with me. Not at anyone. Just with me. She did not know what to say. So she said nothing. And Monk began to speak. Grant me the strength to endure what I cannot change. Grant me the will to change what I cannot endure. Grant me the wisdom to know when to fight and when to float. And grant me one clean shot when the time comes. Linnea felt the words settle into her like stones into still water. She repeated them in her mind. One clean shot. That was all she needed. One moment of clarity in a night defined by chaos. She checked the scope. Still fog, but less than before. Her body heat was working, slowly, painfully 1 degree at a time. She pressed it harder against her chest and willed herself to burn brighter. Firebase broke through on the main channel. Quaveto's voice was urgent. Stillwater, we have a development. Helicopter inbound to your position. Battalion is ordering extraction. The mission is being transferred to a drone strike. Linnea felt the words like a physical blow. Say again, Firebase. Quaveto repeated himself. Drone strike authorized. Edfio missile. They're going to level the compound. Extraction helicopter reaches you in 45 minutes. Mission accomplished either way. She understood immediately. A drone strike would kill Kingfisher. It would also kill everyone else in the compound. And through her fogged scope, in the yellow glow of the balcony lights, she had seen something that Battalion had not. 7 figures in servants' clothing, moving with the careful deference of people who had no choice. Women, prisoners, slaves brought to be sold alongside the weapons. The drone does not know they are there, Monk said quietly. His voice was hollow. He had seen them too. Rennick came on the channel. Mission success is what matters. Kingfisher dies either way. Vashin gets extracted, lives to fight another day. This is the right call. Linnea stared at the distant balcony. 7 women. 7 lives that command had written off as acceptable losses. She thought about her brother, about the moment the water took him, about all the people in the world who disappeared because someone decided they did not matter enough to save. Negative on extraction, she said. The channel went silent. Then Briere's voice, careful and measured. Stillwater, repeat your last. I am refusing extraction, Linnea said. I could take the shot. 1 round, 1 target, 0 collateral. The drone cannot do that. I can. Rennick exploded. Vashin, you're hypothermic, bleeding, working with compromised equipment, and you want to refuse a direct extraction order? This is not heroism. This is suicide. 7 women, Linnea said. Her voice was steady despite the cold, despite the pain, despite everything. 7 women who did not choose to be there. 7 women who will die if that drone fires. I am not going to let that happen. You do not get to make that call, Rennick shouted. Briere cut him off. Actually, Gunny, she does. Field operators have discretion to refuse extraction if they believe mission success is still achievable. Vashin, I need you to confirm. Do you believe you can make this shot? Linnea pulled the scope from her chest and checked the glass. The fog had cleared. Not perfectly, but enough. She could see through it now. She could see the balcony, the lights, the shapes moving behind the windows. Scope is clear, she said. Target zone is visible. When Kingfisher arrives, I will have a shot, and I will not miss. The helicopter was 45 minutes out. Kingfisher was due in less than 2 hours. She had one chance to prove that a single Marine with a rifle could do what a $1 million missile could not. She settled into position on the capsized hull, Delphine cradled against her shoulder, her eye pressed to the scope. The rain fell. The water rose, and Linnea Vashin prepared to save 7 lives with 1 bullet. The helicopter appeared on the horizon 43 minutes later, its searchlight cutting through the rain like a blade. Linnea watched it approach from her position on the hull, Delphine steady against her shoulder, her eye never leaving the scope. Stillwater, this is Reaper 6. We have visual on your position. Confirm you are ready for extraction. She keyed her mic negative, Reaper 6. Extraction refused. Return to firebase. The helicopter pilot's voice carried disbelief. Say again, Stillwater. You are refusing extraction? Confirmed, Linnea said. I have the shot. I'm taking it. The helicopter hovered 200 meters away, its downdraft churning the floodwater into chaos. The searchlight found her, pinning her against the darkness like a specimen under glass. She did not flinch, did not look away from the scope. Briere's voice came through the command channel. Reaper 6, return to firebase. Stillwater is mission active. The pilot hesitated. Firebase, we have visual on the operator. She appears compromised. Hypothermia, possible injury. Recommend we override and extract. Negative, Briere said firmly. The operator has field discretion. Return to base. That is an order. The helicopter hung in the air for a long moment. Then it banked away, the searchlight sweeping across the water one final time before disappearing into the darkness. Linnea was alone again. Monk's voice came through the private channel. That took courage. Refusing a ride home when you look like death warmed over. Linnea adjusted her grip on a rifle. Death is going to have to wait, she said. I have work to do. She settled deeper into her shooting position. The hull of the capsized boat was unstable, shifting with every wave, but she had dealt with worse platforms. In Kandahar, she had taken a shot from the back of a moving vehicle. In Helmand, she had fired while dangling from a rooftop with one hand. Stability was a luxury. Adaptation was a skill. The compound lights blazed in her scope. She could see the balcony clearly now, the second-floor windows, the shapes moving inside. The 7 women were visible, lined up along the far wall like merchandise awaiting inspection. Guards moved among them, checking restraints, positioning them for display. Linnea felt cold fury building in her chest. These women were someone's daughters, someone's sisters, someone's mothers. They had been stolen from their lives and brought here to be sold to men who saw them as products. And in less than an hour, a drone was going to erase them from existence because command had decided their deaths were acceptable. Not tonight, Linnea whispered. Not on my watch. Monk broke in. Movement at the north dock. Boats approaching. She shifted her scope. 3 vessels, larger than the patrol boats from earlier, running with full lights. These were not hunters. These were dignitaries. Buyers arriving for the auction. The first boat docked, and men began climbing onto the platform. Expensive suits beneath rain jackets. Bodyguards with automatic weapons. These were the customers Kingfisher had invited. Men with money and appetites, and no regard for human life. Monk counted them. 12 buyers. Maybe 30 security total. And somewhere among them, the man you are here to kill. Linnea scanned the boats through her scope. Kingfisher was not among the first arrivals. He would come last, she knew. Men like him never enter a room first. They waited until the stage was set, until all eyes were ready to watch them make their entrance. 20 minutes passed. The buyers moved inside the compound. The women were arranged on the balcony, visible through the windows, lit by harsh electric light. A showcase, a preview of what was for sale. Then the 4th boat appeared. It was smaller than the others, faster, sleeker. A single figure stood at the bow, tall and silver-haired, a cigar glowing between his fingers despite the rain. Even at 400 meters, even through a scope still bearing traces of flood damage, Linnea recognized him from the intelligence photos. Kingfisher. He stepped onto the dock with the casual confidence of a man who had never faced consequences. His guards flanked him, 6 men with the hard eyes of professionals. But he walked ahead of them as if he were invincible, as if no bullet in the world could touch him. Linnea placed the crosshairs on his chest and began to slow her breathing. Monk's voice was barely a whisper. Distance 415 meters. Wind northeast, 6 knots. Humidity 92%. She made the adjustments automatically, dialing the scope, calculating the drop, feeling the rhythm of the waves beneath her. One shot. That was all she would get. If she missed, Kingfisher would vanish into the compound and the drone would level everything. 7 women would die. 47 Marines would go unavenged. Her finger found the trigger. Kingfisher reached the compound entrance and paused. He turned to look out at the flood, at the darkness, at the rain falling from the black sky. For one impossible moment, it seemed like he was looking directly at her. Then he smiled and stepped inside. The shot window closed. Linnea exhaled slowly and kept her eye on the scope. He would come out again. He would have to. The balcony was where the auction would happen. The balcony was where she would end him. She just had to wait a little longer. 37 minutes. That was how long Linnea waited with her. I pressed to the scope, her finger resting beside the trigger, her breathing measured and slow. 37 minutes of watching shadows move behind windows. 37 minutes of waves rocking the hull beneath her. 37 minutes of cold, so deep it had stopped being pain and become simply a state of existence. Then the balcony doors opened. Kingfisher emerged first, his silver hair catching the electric light, his cigar replaced by a glass of something amber. Behind him came the buyers, spreading across the balcony in a semicircle of expensive suits and predatory anticipation. And behind them, led by guards with hands on their restraints, came the 7 women. They were arranged along the balcony railing like items at an auction block, which Linnea realized was exactly what they were. Kingfisher began to speak, his voice lost to distance, but his gestures made the meaning clear. He was presenting his merchandise. He was selling human beings. Monk's voice came through her earpiece, tight with controlled anger. I have eyes on target. He is front and center. Clear shot if you take it now. Linnea placed the crosshairs on Kingfisher's chest. 415 meters. Wind had shifted slightly, now northeast at 7 knots. She adjusted. Her finger moved to the trigger. Then one of the women stumbled. A guard shoved her back in a line, but the movement pushed another woman forward, directly into Linnea's sight picture. The crosshairs were no longer on Kingfisher. They were on a terrified face, young, maybe 19, eyes wide with a fear that transcended language. Linnea lifted her finger from the trigger. No shot, she breathed. Civilian in the way. The seconds stretched like hours. The young woman was pushed back in a line. The guard moved away. Kingfisher raised his glass to the buyers and stepped forward to the railing, perfectly framed against the light, perfectly still for one eternal heartbeat. Now, Linnea whispered, and squeezed the trigger. Click. Nothing happened. For one frozen moment, Linnea's mind refused to process what her hands already knew. Misfire. The water damage. Something in the firing mechanism had failed. 14 hours in a flood, and the rifle had finally betrayed her. But her training did not freeze. Her training was older than thought, deeper than panic. Her hands moved automatically, executing the immediate action drill she had performed 10,000 times. Top, rack, squeeze. She slapped the magazine to ensure it was seated. She racked the bolt to eject the failed round and chamber a new one. She found the trigger again. The rifle fired. The round crossed 415 meters in less than half a second. Linnea watched through the scope as Kingfisher spun sideways, the glass falling from his hand, his body twisting with the impact. But he did not fall. The shot had hit his shoulder, not his chest. The scope's water damage had shifted her zero just enough to turn a kill shot into a wound. He was alive, crawling toward the balcony doors, screaming for his guards. The compound erupted into chaos. Guards opened fire blindly into the darkness, muzzle flashes strobing across the balcony. Bullets struck the water around Linnea's position, sending up geysers of spray. The buyers scattered. The women screamed. Linnea racked another round. She had seconds before Kingfisher reached cover. Seconds before the drone was authorized. Seconds before 7 women died because she had missed. She did not think about the guards firing at her. Did not think about the waves rocking her platform. Did did not think about the cold or the pain or the 14 hours of hell that had led to this moment. She thought only about the crosshairs and the crawling figure and the 47 Marines who deserved justice. She exhaled half a breath, held the rest, found the stillness between heartbeats, and fired. The second round took Kingfisher in the center of his back. He collapsed 3 feet from the doorway, his hand still reaching for safety he would never find. Through the scope, Linnea watched him stop moving, watched the pool of darkness spread beneath him, watched the most wanted arms dealer in Southeast Asia die on a balcony in the rain. "Target down," she said. Her voice was steady despite everything. "Kingfisher is down." The guards were still firing, rounds cracking past her head, splashing into the water inches from her body. She slid off the hull and submerged, holding her breath, letting the flood hide her from the bullets. Above the surface, she could hear the chaos continuing. But beneath the water, there was only silence. When her lungs began to burn, she surfaced slowly, just her eyes and nose above the waterline. The firing had stopped. Through the rain, she could see figures fleeing the compound. The buyers abandoning their purchases. The guards abandoning their posts. And on the balcony, 7 women standing frozen in the light, alive, unharmed, free. Monk's voice broke through the static. "Stillwater, confirmed target status." Linnea pulled herself back onto the hull. Her body was shaking, her leg wound bleeding freely again, her vision narrowing at the edges. But she found the scope and looked one last time at the balcony, at Kingfisher's motionless body, at the women who were already being led away from the railing by someone who must have been a survivor with a conscience. "Confirmed," she said. "Target eliminated. Collateral 0. She let the rifle rest against her chest and looked up at the sky. The rain was beginning to ease. Somewhere to the east, the first hint of gray was touching the horizon. Dawn was coming, and she had kept her promise. The adrenaline carried her for 3 minutes, then abandoned her completely. Linnea felt her body begin to shut down in stages. First, her hands stopped responding, the fingers that had just saved 7 lives now curling uselessly against the rifle stock. Then her legs gave out, sliding off the hull and back into the water that had been trying to kill her all night. She grabbed the edge of the capsized boat and held on, but her grip was failing. "Stillwater, Firebase is dispatching extraction." Brier's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Hold your position. Boat is 6 minutes out." 6 minutes. Linnea was not sure she had 6 seconds. The cold had won. 14 hours in flood water, blood loss from the leg wound, and the massive energy expenditure of the swim and the shot had finally emptied her reserves. She was running on nothing. Monk's voice cut through the fog in her mind. "Stillwater, talk to me. Stay with me. What do you see?" She forced her eyes to focus. "I see water," she said. Her words were slurred, thick and slow. "I see rain. I see morning coming." "What else?" Monk pressed. "Tell me about Louisiana. Tell me about the bayou. What does morning look like there?" Linnea let the question pull her backward, into memory, into warmth. "Morning in Plaquemines Parish," she said, the mist coming off the water. Cypress trees like old men with their knees in the mud. Herons standing, so still you think they are statues until they move. She smiled weakly. "My grandmother used to wake me up before dawn, made me watch the sun rise over the levee. Said every day that started with light was a gift." "Keep talking," Monk said. His voice was urgent now. "The boat is 4 minutes out. Tell me about your grandmother." "Delphine," Linnea said. Her name was Delphine. "She taught me everything. How to swim, how to shoot, how to wait." She paused, her grip slipping on the hull. "She told me the water does not get to win. I promised her. I promised Matthew. The water does not get to win." "And it did not," Monk said firmly. "You won, Stillwater. You beat the water. You made the shot. Now you just have to hold on a little longer." Linnea tried to tighten her grip, but her fingers would not obey. She slipped lower, the water rising to her chin again, the hull drifting slowly away from her weakening grasp. She thought about letting go. It would be easy, just relax and sink and let the current take her wherever it wanted. She had done what she came to do. Maybe that was enough. Then she heard her brother's voice. It was not real. She knew that. Matthew had been dead for 17 years. But she heard him anyway, clear as the rain on her face, young and bright, and full of the life that had been stolen from him. Keep swimming, Lynn. You promised. Keep swimming. She kicked. Her legs barely responded, but she kicked anyway, fighting toward the hull, reaching for the edge she had lost. Her hand found wood, and she grabbed it, held it, refused to let go. 2 minutes, Monk said. I can see the boat. They are coming, Stillwater. They are almost there. The extraction boat appeared out of the gray dawn like a hallucination. Linnea watched it approach, the bow cutting through the flood water, figures moving on deck. She recognized Quevedo at the helm, his face tight with urgency. The boat pulled alongside her position. Hands reached down, strong hands, grabbing her arms, her shoulders, hauling her out of the water. She felt herself lifted, felt the solidity of the deck beneath her back, felt someone cutting away her waterlogged uniform to check her wounds. She would not let go of Delphine. Even as the medic tried to pry the rifle from her grip, she held on. Sergeant, you can let go of the rifle, Quevedo said gently. You are safe now. Linnea looked up at him through eyes that barely focused. Negative, she said. She stayed dry. She earned the ride. Quevedo stared at her for a moment. Then he nodded and let her keep the weapon. The boat accelerated toward Firebase Basilisk. The medic was doing something to her leg, pressure and bandages and words she could not quite process. Someone had wrapped a thermal blanket around her shoulders. Someone else was checking her pupils with a penlight. Rennick's voice came through the radio, audible even over the engine noise. Stillwater, this is Firebase. The 7 women are secure. Vietnamese authorities have them. All alive, all free. Linnea heard the words, but they took a long time to assemble into meaning. 7 women, alive, free, because she had stayed in the water, because she had refused to quit, because the water did not get to win. She smiled then, for real, her cracked lips pulling painfully against skin that had been wet for 14 hours. She looked up at the sky, at the gray dawn bleeding into pink, at the first true light she had seen since entering the flood the night before. Then her body decided it had done enough. Her eyes closed, her grip on Delphine finally relaxed, and Sergeant First Class Linnea Vachon let herself rest for the first time in 14 hours. The medic caught the rifle before it hit the deck. Quevedo looked down at the unconscious sniper and shook his head in disbelief. Bayou Born, he muttered. They are built different down there. The boat raced toward Firebase as the sun rose over the Mekong Delta, painting the floodwaters gold. She woke to the sound of rain on a tin roof. For a terrible moment, she thought she was still in the flood, still fighting the current, still holding Delphine above the waterline. Then she felt the mattress beneath her back and the dry warmth of blankets against her skin, and she understood that she had survived. The field hospital at Firebase Basilisk was a converted warehouse, all concrete floors and harsh fluorescent lights. Linnea lay in a bed near the window, and 4 in her arm, monitors tracking her heartbeat with soft electronic pulses. Her leg was bandaged properly now, the gash closed with 23 stitches. Her fingers were wrapped in gauze to protect the skin that had split from prolonged water exposure. Monk sat in a chair beside her bed, a Vietnamese Bible open in his lap. He was not reading it. He was watching her. You look terrible, he said when he saw her eyes open. Linnea tried to smile, but her face hurt. How long was I out? 18 hours, Monk replied. The doctors induced it. Your core temperature was 89 degrees when they brought you in. Any lower, and we would be having a very different conversation. She processed that. 89 degrees was severe hypothermia. For more degrees, and her heart would have stopped. She had been closer to death than she realized. Delphine, she said suddenly. Where's my rifle? Monk nodded toward the corner of the room. The M40A6 was there, cleaned and oiled, and resting on a weapons rack like it had never spent 14 hours in a flood. Quevedo cleaned her personally, Monk said. Said any rifle that stayed dry through that deserved proper treatment. Linnea felt something loosen in her chest. Gratitude, maybe, or just relief that the weapon her grandmother had inspired was being honored. The door opened, and Captain Briere entered. She was in clean utilities, her hair pulled back, her face composed in the professional mask of command. But her eyes were different, softer. She carried a tablet computer under her arm. "Sergeant Vashon," she said, "how are you feeling?" "Like I was in a flood for 14 hours, Linnea replied. "Mum." Briere almost smiled. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "I have news. Kingfisher's network is in collapse. His buyers scattered when he died, and Vietnamese intelligence has been rolling up cells all morning. The weapons pipeline is shut down. It will take them years to rebuild, if they ever do." Linnea nodded slowly. That was good. That was worth the 14 hours. But it was not the news she needed. "The women," she said. "What happened to the women?" Briere's expression softened further. She tapped her tablet and turned it so Linnea could see the screen. 7 faces looked back at her. Young faces, tired faces, faces marked by trauma, but also by something else. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of hope. "Vietnamese authorities took them to a safe facility," Briere said. "Medical care, counseling, contact with families. 3 of them have already been reunited with relatives. The others will take longer, but they are safe. They are free. Because of you." Linnea stared at the faces. She had not seen them clearly through her scope. Not really. They had been shapes, obstacles, innocents in the crossfire. Now they were people. Real people with real lives that would continue, because she had refused to let a drone end them. "One of them asked about you," Briere continued. "The youngest one. She wanted to know who saved them. I told her it was a Marine who does not know how to quit." Linnea looked away, uncomfortable with the weight of the moment. "I was just doing my job," she said. Briere shook her head. "No, Sergeant. Your job was to kill Kingfisher. Saving those women was a choice. A choice that could have cost you your life." She paused. "My nephew would have made the same choice. I think that is why I trusted you to make it." The mention of Andre Briere hung in the air between them. Linnea did not know what to say, so she said nothing. Sometimes silence was its own form of respect. The door opened again. This time it was Rennick. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he walked to the foot of her bed and stood at attention. Linnea had never seen him stand at attention for anyone below the rank of colonel. "Sergeant Vashon," he said. His voice was formal, but something underneath it had changed. "I owe you an apology." Linnea blinked. From Rennick, those words were unprecedented. "I did not believe you could make that shot," he continued. "I thought the conditions were impossible. I thought your equipment was too compromised. I thought you would fail, and I would have to explain to command why I let a Marine die for nothing." He paused. "I was wrong. You made the shot. You made it twice. With a fogged scope, from an unstable platform, after 14 hours in water that should have killed you. I have been a sniper for 16 years, and I am not sure I could have done what you did." Linnea held his gaze. "That is the first time you have ever admitted I might be your equal, Gunny." Something flickered in Rennick's eyes. Not quite a smile, but close. "I'm not admitting you are my equal, Vashon. I am admitting you might be better." He glanced at Monk, then back at her. "Get some rest. Briere is putting you in for a commendation. You earned it." He turned and walked out before she could respond. Monk watched him go and then looked at Linnea with raised eyebrows. Was that Gunnery Sergeant Rennick being humble? "I think I need to check my Bible for signs of the apocalypse." Linnea laughed. It hurt her ribs and her face and her everything, but she laughed anyway. It was the first time she had laughed in what felt like forever. Outside the window, the rain had finally stopped. Sunlight was breaking through the clouds, pale and golden, painting the flooded landscape in shades of amber and green. The water was still there, but had not won. 3 weeks later, Linnea stood in dress blues on the parade ground at Camp Hansen, Okinawa. The sun was bright and warm, a stark contrast to the rain that had nearly killed her. Her legs still ached where the stitches had been removed, and her fingers were still tender beneath the white gloves. But she stood at perfect attention as 200 Marines assembled before her. Captain Briere read the citation aloud. for extraordinary heroism in combat operations against enemy forces. Sergeant First Class Linnea Vashon, acting as designated marksman during a joint counter-trafficking operation, maintained her position for 14 hours under extreme conditions, including rising floodwaters, enemy patrol activity, and equipment failure. Despite opportunities for extraction, Sergeant Vashon elected to remain in position to execute a precision engagement that eliminated a high-value target while preserving the lives of 7 civilian hostages. Her actions reflect the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service. The words washed over Linnea like water she no longer feared. She had heard them before, in the rehearsal, in the paperwork, in the quiet conversations that preceded moments like this. But hearing them spoken aloud, before her peers, before the commanders who had doubted her, and the teammates who had believed in her, gave them weight they had not carried before. Briere pinned the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal to her chest. The medal was cool against her uniform, small and precise, a fraction of the weight she had carried through that flood. "Congratulations, Sergeant," Briere said quietly. Then, even more quietly, Andre would be proud. Linnea met her eyes and nodded once. No words were necessary. The ceremony concluded with the traditional formalities. Linnea shook hands with colonels and generals whose names she would forget by evening. She accepted congratulations from Marines she had never met and probably never would again. She posed for photographs that would end up in official publications and recruiting materials. Then the crowds dispersed, and she found herself standing alone at the edge of the parade ground, looking out at the ocean beyond the base. Monk appeared beside her, his dress blues immaculate, his new corporal chevrons bright on his sleeves. The promotion had come through the week before. Briere had made sure of it. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Being a hero?" Linnea considered the question. "I do not feel like a hero," she said. "I feel like someone who did not quit when quitting would have been easier." Monk nodded slowly. "That is what heroism is, Stillwater. Doing the hard thing when the easy thing is right there waiting for you." He paused. "The women are here, by the way. Vietnamese authorities arranged it. They wanted to meet you." Linnea turned. 7 women stood near the edge of the parade ground, accompanied by translators and officials. They looked different than they had in the photographs. Healthier, less afraid. One of them, the youngest, the one who had stumbled into Linnea's sight picture and nearly cost her the shot, stepped forward. She spoke in accented English, her words careful and deliberate. "You saved us," she said. "From the water. From the men. Both kinds of drowning." Linnea felt something crack open in her chest. She thought about Matthew, about his hand slipping from hers, about the 17 years she had spent carrying the weight of a promise she could never truly keep. She had not saved her brother. She would never be able to change that. But she had saved these 7. And maybe in some way she did not fully understand, that was enough. "I know what it is like to lose someone to the water," she said. "I was not going to let it happen again." The young woman reached out and took Linnea's hand. Her grip was firm, alive, warm with the life that Linnea had preserved. "Thank you," she said simply. Then she released her grip and stepped back to join the others. Linnea watched them go, watched them climb into vehicles that would take them to airports and reunions and futures they had almost lost. Watched until they disappeared from view. Rennick found her an hour later, standing at the shore where the base met the Pacific. She had taken off her shoes and rolled up her trousers, letting the waves wash over her feet. Delphine was back in the armory, cleaned and secured, but Linnea did not need the rifle anymore. "Not for this. You ever think about training the next generation?" Rennick asked. He stood beside her, his own shoes still on, watching the water with an expression she could not read. "Scout Sniper School needs instructors who have actually done it. People who know what it is like when everything goes wrong and you have to make the shot anyway." Linnea looked at him. "You offer me a job, Gunny?" "I am saying I was wrong about you," he replied. "And I am saying those recruits need to learn from someone who stayed in the water when anyone else would have left." He paused. "Think about it." She turned back to the ocean. The waves rolled in and out, patient and eternal, indifferent to the struggles of the people who lived beside them. She had feared water once, had hated it for taking her brother, had spent 17 years fighting it, proving she was stronger, refusing to let it win. But standing here now, with the Pacific lapping at her ankles and the sun warm on her face, she did not feel like she was fighting anymore. She felt like she was home. "I will think about it," she said. Rennick nodded and walked away, leaving her alone with the sea. Linnea stood there for a long time, watching the waves, feeling the water rise and fall around her feet. She was not afraid. She was not angry. She was simply present, existing in the space between land and sea, between the person she had been and the person she was becoming. The water did not get to win, but maybe winning was not the point. Maybe the point was learning to live with it, learning to let it carry you instead of fighting every current, learning that survival was not about conquering the flood, but about finding stillness in the middle of it. She smiled and closed her eyes and let the waves wash over her. Still swimming, she whispered, "Still here." If this story moved you, drop a comment below and let us know your favorite moment or character. Or tell us about someone you know who kept going when everyone else said it was impossible. Sometimes the greatest victories come from the people who simply refuse to quit.